Welcome back, everybody. My name is Michel. I am Bloomberg's head of diversity and inclusion for the Americas region. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you today and also to be with our guest, Rosie Perez. She is an activist, a producer, a two-time Emmy-nominated choreographer for Living Color, the director of the film Yo Soy Boricua, Pa Que Tú Lo Sepas, Oscar and Golden Globe nominated. You know her from roles in Do the Right Thing, White Man Can't Jump, Pineapple Express, many others. She can most recently be seen in Birds of Prey and will soon be seen in HBO Max's highly anticipated series, The Flight Attendant. Rosie is here to talk with us today about inclusion in Hollywood and beyond. Rosie Perez, welcome to Bloomberg.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, listen, so we have a lot to get to today. And first, I think it's appropriate to ask, how you are and how you've dealt with this lockdown, COVID, everything we've been dealing with over the last 6 or so months.
It's been tough, but I also know that many, many people around the world and here in America have had it tougher. But as the saying goes, it doesn't discriminate. So we're all being very, very cautious. Having the honor to work with Governor Cuomo on his Mask Up campaign really lifted my spirits during COVID, because regardless of how much money you have, a pandemic is a pandemic. A shutdown is a shutdown. And it was very, very depressing for me. And for me to be able to do my civic duty and help out, really, really lifted my spirits. Really did. But my family is safe. We did have one that passed, a distant relative, and it was very, very sad. But everyone else is safe and healthy.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that, and certainly my condolences to your family member who did pass away.
Thank you.
So I mentioned Do the Right Thing. Your first really big on-screen role was in Do the Right Thing, which was Spike Lee's seminal film about race during a very volatile, hot summer day or summer week in New York City. Unfortunately, though, it seems that we haven't gotten too far, given some of what we've seen take place over the last 6 months in the United States. Directors of color, people in the industry like you, Spike, and others are really critical to putting these stories on the big screen and exposing some of the hard truths around racism and discrimination. Do you still have to fight to tell stories that aren't necessarily palatable to what some might call mainstream audiences?
You're joking, right? Yes. Yes, a definitive yes. It is still very, very difficult. Even, I've been trying to get either a documentary, stage play, film about the Young Lords, about a bunch of college students in New York City that became activists and took to the streets and demanded rights for people living in Harlem, and specifically for the Latino community here in New York City. And you would think that that would be a no-brainer, but they were like, well, what's the audience for it? That's always the feedback. But it is a struggle, and you have to just keep on fighting, and which I do. 30 plus years in this business, I have not been deterred. I haven't slowed down the fight, and I'm going to keep fighting. And after George Floyd incident, it's sad that a tragedy had to wake up the nation, wake up the world, but I think, and I do know that it has woken up Hollywood as well, and they are trying to make changes, but it's just not enough.
Yeah. That it's interesting that you mentioned that. I did want to ask, a big part of the work that we do here at Bloomberg, and many companies have done, certainly over the last 5 months, has been around addressing race in organizations, right? You mentioned George Floyd, of course, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, James Blake, most recently, are all part of these regular and very meaningful discussions that we're having. But, unfortunately, it's not normal for our corporate workplaces. In Hollywood, though, it does seem that you have a little bit more leeway to shed some light and foster discussions on and about race. But the question is, and you answered a little bit in that last answer, but have you been given the green light to do some of to do some kind of critical examinations of that, but been asked to tone it down. So in other words, did they say, okay, go ahead, Rosie, do something about X, but don't go too far because we don't want to upset the people who might pay $15 to see the movie?
I wouldn't say that anyone asked me to tone down anything that I wanted to make. They've asked me to tone down other aspects of the of my creativity, you know.
Such as?
Well, such as, like, if you look at the film Fearless that I did with Jeff Bridges and directed by Peter Weir, that was a game changer for me because it was one of the first directors that didn't have any preconceived notions as to who I am as a person, as to who I am as a Puerto Rican American. And he just let me fly, no pun intended. And you don't have that all the time. I'm doing a movie about a plane crash where my son dies in my arms. And I was hysterical when he yelled action during the crashing scene. If it would have been a different director, they would have told me, "Why are you so hysterical? Just calm it down." I go, "What?" They always second guess your emotional response because they don't understand that our emotional response is real. It's palpable. It's not, there's no pretense behind it. It's honest. And so, when I want to work, I want to bring an authenticity to my character. And sometimes you're asked to just, be quiet. You don't want to scare the audience too much and stuff. So I would get that. But, here's the thing. When I did Yo Soy Boricua Pa Que Tu Lo Sepa, I went to the right person. I went to Rory Kennedy and Liz Garbus because I knew that they were two individuals that didn't hold back, that didn't proceed with a prejudice, with any type of bigotry. And I understood that they would allow me to make the film that I wanted to make. Other people, I knew that they just wanted me to concentrate on the Puerto Rican Day Parade and show Puerto Ricans, yay, waving flags and being happy people and dancing salsa in the street. And I'm like, no, darling, I don't think so. This is about politics.
Yeah.
This is about the migration of Puerto Ricans to the United States. This is about how United States conquered Puerto Rico and colonized Puerto Rico and is still doing so. And and so that's the key right now. I know a lot is going on in Hollywood, but it's the people behind the camera that makes the change. I understand with the Academy now that they're asking for certain protocols so that you can be considered for Oscar contention, that you need a certain amount of people of color in your cast and storyline and this and this and that. Nothing's going to change if the money people don't change.
Yeah.
It's the money people, it's the people, it's the financing, it's the studios, it's the dollars for marketing. It's all of those things that need to fall in line. And until that changes, you could have a quota up the yin yang and it doesn't matter. It really won't matter. And so I think I don't know if I answered your question, but it gets me riled up because when I first came on the scene, I had no skin in the game. I was a college student that got discovered by Spike Lee. I was telling people I could go back to school. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, why isn't anybody screaming and yelling that Hollywood, there's a lot of racism in Hollywood. This isn't fair. How come I keep getting roles for hookers and drug addicts and beaten, a beaten girlfriend, and what? Excuse me? And when I had the audacity to say, can I go out for the roles, the Jessica Lange roles, they looked at me as if I was insane to even request that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean, because it's the people behind the cameras. Those are the people that are making the real decision. It's not so much just the filmmakers. It's the studio execs. It's the money people.
And you mentioned that about the money. So my question is, what's your take on this notion that there are too many movies that fetishize the suffering of people of color, right? So the notion is that the movies that get all the money behind them are about slavery or some other stereotype that puts people of color in a position of suffering. Would you say we've had enough of films like 12 Years a Slave, or do we need more films like The Photograph and Tenet that put people of color into the romantic lead, or the lead as the spy who saves the world? How do we break people of color out of those roles that stereotype them?
I mean, I think that it's great if we can have rom-coms for people of color, you know, and that sort. But there's a necessity for movies like 12 Years a Slave. That said, it was supposed to be from the POV from the person who was enslaved, right? And it kind of was, but it was kind of a shared lead with the slave owner. And you're
Right.
sitting there going, no, you missed it. You missed the point,
Right.
And there's another TV series now about John Brown and Ethan Hawke is a friend, and he's a wonderful actor. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but still, you're going to talk about the abolishment of slavery and have a white person as the lead.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. So I don't have a problem with that, and I think that we need to showcase the good, bad, and ugly of all human beings. That's pure art. But it seems as if we are just relegated to one thing, or predominantly one thing, I should say. And that
Yeah.
is the suffering, the poor, the downtrodden. I just turned down a role. I said, well, why does my character have to be poor? Why does she
Mm.
have to be suffering? Oh, well, she lost a child. I go, there's rich people who lose children as well,
Right.
and they were like, but I don't understand what you mean. And I literally had that conversation, literally in the 21st century, in 2020. This conversation is still going on. Um, so so I don't want to get too like we only have to do one thing because it, it'll marginalize us again. If
Yeah.
you look at history when Good Times came out, right?
Hmm.
Wonderful show, great acting. There was a lot of people of color that had problems with it. So what happened? They got so afraid of it that they said, "Okay, we won't do those type of TV shows again." And then there was an
Right.
outcry. How come you don't want to show people that don't have as much, people of color that don't have as much? And then, it's just a vicious circle of them trying to fix things. And what they need to understand is that they need to fix themselves. They need to fix the systemic racism that's innately inside them as a person that they may not be aware of. No one talks about that. There's people who say, I'm not a racist. I go, I know, darling, I know you don't think you are, but you are. Let me show you the way out of
Yeah.
it. And so that's what I mean. And even when we do have a great opportunity, let's say my very, very good friend and mentor Spike Lee, he still has to beg for financing. That's insane. That's insane with his track record.
Yeah.
And then once he does get the financing, he's smart enough to know that he needs those marketing dollars there. Because you have to market it, those films of color correctly, and to the audiences. And a lot of times the studios will say, oh, we're going to hire an expert to market to the Latino community. And I go, the Latino community is the entertainment community. Those are the
Right.
people, they're the number one moviegoers, my people. And you're like, well, we don't know how to market them. You already are marketing to us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's that. I know it sounds convoluted, but I just get so riled up.
No, it's understandable. Um, when we do get that opportunity to tell our own stories or portray ourselves in the way that we want to be seen, do we have some obligation to break the stereotypes ourselves? So do we do a disservice to ourselves when we make films like Soul Plane, or if you see like music videos like WAP by Cardi B, do we do ourselves a disservice portraying ourselves in those ways?
It's hard for me to criticize another artist. I will speak for myself. I will say that when I get a role, I just want the truth to come through. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to romanticize suffering. I don't want to romanticize um, poverty. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to tell the truth, just the plain, honest truth. You know, um, you know, and that's, I feel, is every artist's obligation. And not to further any type of negative stereotypes, because everyone is a stereotype. Everyone is. You are. I
Mm-hmm.
am. Bill Clinton is. Everyone's a stereotype. You know what I mean? But when the negativity comes into the play, and the history behind that negativity comes into play, and you participate in furthering it, it pains me. It literally pains me. You know. But if you talk about 12 Years a Slave, and you talk about someone like Lupita's performance, she
No, it's
brought the
brilliant.
truth,
Yeah, it's
because she
brilliant.
brought the truth.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Um,
she didn't talk in that typical cadence. She didn't, you know, you saw the intelligence in her character. You saw the emotional intelligence in her character. You know, um, so I think that's what the key is to just bring the truth.
yeah, and to that point, your own film, the film about Puerto Rico, Yo Soy Boricua. It was a very intimate look at your culture, and to some extent what makes you you, right? We talk a lot in the DNI space about the different perspectives that diversity brings to the table. How has your own background influenced, initially your dancing, which is what you really kind of became initially known for, then your acting, and ultimately your filmmaking? How has your own background really influenced what you've done?
My background is unique in the sense that I was part of the system, the child welfare system. I was a ward of the state,
Mm,
and I was part of the Catholic Home for Children system. So therefore, I was also, as bittersweet as it was, and it was more bitter than it was sweet, let me tell you, the abuse that I endured there. I was also
mm,
privy to a different type of life. I was upstate New York in a very well-to-do area, going to, a very good school, um, in a very predominantly white environment. And so I saw how the other half lived. And when I finally got out of the system and went back to Brooklyn, I had a different perspective than the kids on my block. Um, and I know that I can bring that to my acting. And I know that I do. You
yeah.
know. So when people say to me, "Oh, you're so street." No, no, actually I'm not. Actually, I'm very corny. I'm very nerdy, you know. I really am. I just want to read books, as you can see behind me, and watch boxing, and watch politics, and scream at the news channels, and but I can bring it all, and I said once in a New York Times interview that people who come from abject poverty really make the best artists, because every single day that we wake up, we have to lie
Mm,
in order to survive.
mm,
Every single day, you have to get up and put on a face that everything's okay. I'm going to make the best of today. I'm going to be as productive as I can be, and I'm not going to let anyone see me sweat. And I'm talking about not as just adults, I'm talking about children. That's
yeah.
what I did. That's what I did. I had to carry on as if nothing was wrong in my life, so that I could just get treated fairly when I walked into a room. That's what I bring to my acting.
Mm. You mentioned this movie about the young lords that you're trying to do. putting that one aside for just a moment, what would be the one role or project that you would most love to carry off and get done before you say, look, I'm done. I'm not gonna be doing this anymore. What's the one thing you'd really want to get done before you do that?
There's way too many projects that there is not just one. There's not just one, but I will tell this to anybody who's watching, who is of color, who is watching this program: make sure that your representation represents you correctly. And if they don't, fire them. It's been a seriously, it's been a game changer for me when I walked into the room to my current management and said, this is who I am, this is what I want, these are my issues. And if you can't deliver it, maybe we shouldn't be doing business together. Be assertive, because it's your life, it's your career, and these people work with you. So you got to make them work for you.
And you touched on this a little while ago, but there are these rules that the Motion Picture Academy just recently announced that going forward, the films that need to be nominated for Best Picture are going to need to meet some certain standards, representation both in front of and behind the camera. You sounded like you felt like they don't go far enough, but do you think that they'll have an impact on how filmmakers try to get their films on stage in March when the Oscars roll around?
I don't think it's a matter of they don't go far enough. It's more of a matter for me that, is it the right approach? Because when it comes to art, when you issue mandates, that's a slippery slope. That's a dangerous, dangerous ground to start walking on. That said, it is sad and pitiful that there's a necessity for that they feel that they have to put out a set of rules to enforce diversity. If you really think about it, it's insane. It goes back to the days of affirmative action, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't let people of color, Jewish people, into colleges. So they had to make a law forcing the universities, you got to let these people in,
Right.
And so just on that alone, it's like I wish every single filmmaker would take that in. Why do you feel it's like there it's gotten so bad and people are so fed up. They finally said, listen, you can't fix it on your own. We're going to try to fix it for you. Now we're going to make you adhere to certain rules. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad. And for me, it's good on one hand, but on the other hand, I don't want to tell an artist what to do or how they should make their films. You know what I mean? But change needs to come. It needs to come, and it needs to come within. And it also goes back to what I said earlier about financing. Those are the people that should be held accountable. Those are the people that are real decision makers, that green light certain projects, and also I don't want to be anybody's quota.
Right.
If you're going to offer me a role, I want to know that you're offering me the role because I am the right person for the role, not because you got to fill a freaking quota.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself as a filmmaker, why do you fit into that category that somebody has to mandate you?
Yeah.
So so I can't say concretely if it's a great idea or not. I think we need to wait and see. But when I first heard about it, I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I mean, if you think about, Gordon Parks, and you think about,
Melvin Van
Spike Lee,
Peebles.
and you think about Jose Ferrara,
Yeah.
all these people made changes, and they're still, Spike Lee, he's still making changes and stuff. And you walk on a Spike Lee set, it's my first film, and I see all these people of color. I thought that was the norm. And then I do my next movie, I went, oh my goodness, I'm the only person of color literally on this set.
Wow.
Something's wrong here, you know? And the people that I worked with at the time, the second project that I did, they were nice people. They were good people. They were well intentioned. But all good intentions, you know how that goes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting. It's very interesting time, and I'm hoping for the best. I really, really am, because change does need to come, But how we approach it, I think that we should be very, very careful.
So I think we only have maybe a minute or so left. Just a quick kind of lightning round question for you. What would you say has been your favorite role in all of the things you've done thus far in your career? Or can you pick a favorite?
I can't, because if I'm enjoying a certain project at the moment, which I am, the HBO Max, the flight attendant. Right now, this is my favorite. It's my
Okay.
favorite. I'm like in love with this entire production, and talk about diversity and talk about freedom. I mean, that's what I'm experiencing right now. So I'm on a high right now. Um, but I don't have just one, but of course, do the right thing, because it was my first, and fearless,
Sure.
because I had such freedom. White Man Can Jump, because I had just so much fun. The Take with John Leguizamo, because we had just such synergy and chemistry. Um, Being on Broadway, the revival of the Ritz, Terrence McNally. Oh my God, Joe Montello, are you kidding me? I've been a pretty lucky person. I would tell you that much. I worked hard for it. I demanded hard for it, and I surely got it. And, I hope I did good. I hope I did good. But I have many favorites, and I am so, 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 so blessed. I am so blessed. And I have the best representation. And so life is all right.
Good. Well, I will say thank you. I will say also, I mentioned to you very quickly in our pre-call, but you are responsible for one of my favorite lines ever in film. Is a line I can't necessarily repeat here, but you asked Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes if they thought you were a moron, and you were very emphatic about it. And it probably says something about me that's one of my favorite lines in film. But nonetheless, it remains one of my favorite lines in film. Rosie Perez, thank you so very much for joining us here for this conversation. Your work has been an inspiration to a great many people, people of all walks of life, and to see you have done so well is really an inspiration. So thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to much of your work in years to come.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much for furthering the discussion for inclusion and diversity. It is so important.
Thank you.